I just think like $1 million per head per year for a D2C business. You should be able to do 20 million a year with 20 people.
Were you also the highest Amex point aggregator in the UK?
I had 15 million Amex points at one time.
Lads, cheers. Good to do the first one. Fair play. Thanks for coming over.
Oh, fucked it.
Yeah, so Jane.
That's almost bang on.
Yeah, that's almost bang on.
So you didn't take the usual path, I guess, into entrepreneurship. 20 years old. What happened? Why did you decide to take the leap?
I was always a creative, used to draw logos. That was how I got started. Had this brand called Gentry Club in school, which everyone laughed at. And I put a fucking logo on a shit white t-shirt and had a Shopify store. That was like 2015. I must have started between then and now, maybe like easily 10 businesses. By business, I mean a logo and a concept, and put some money into it. And then, yeah, that's kind of the short condensed version. We can get into what happened since
Absolutely, yeah.
as we go. But
What was the moment when you realized I'm going to drop out of my advertising degree and focus full time? Was there like a number or a moment?
yeah, it was when I realized I could sustain myself financially without having to get a job. So I was working in a burger bar, which was opposite my uni house when I was like 19, 20. And I used to literally go on my break and run ads on my phone with like my £10 a day budget. I think we grew that business to like 50 grand a month is when I thought I don't need to go to uni anymore. But I didn't quit. I just stopped going to lectures. So people thought I was some bum, just sat home smoking weed. When actually I was in the office 15 hours a day grinding and scaling. And then
Doing actual advertising.
My dad, I'd got kicked out of uni, which was me leaving, but officially I was kicked out because I didn't submit any coursework. So I just showed him my Shopify dashboard and said it's a real thing. And he was just like, all right, cool. And then a few months later, went to an event which changed my life in hindsight called the E-commerce World Summit, which looking back now is a complete scam. It was a bunch of guru grifters, but I was so naive at the time. I just wanted to meet people. This was from a Facebook group, and it was like 1,000 basically dropshipping entrepreneurs. Went to this event in Singapore, and that's where I met a load of people that I'm still good mates with now, and kind of started the domino effect of, because I think the hardest thing when you start is you don't fucking know anyone. All your friends are basically NPCs or like just very different worldview. So that was the most important thing for me, was just me and other people that thought similarly and were doing e-com shit.
You're also not joining a team. Like as an entrepreneur, you're kind of on your own, or you and your co-founder.
Yeah, especially at the start, because like you do everything. Kind of still feels like that now to some extent, but yeah, I think that is a big drawback, or like part of founderism that normally talks about. Is like by default you're alone, whereas when you join a big business like most people out of uni, by default you're with loads of people. And there's pros and cons to both. You get the location and time freedom of having an e-com business, but if you don't meet people, you're basically going to be like a fucking incel, just on your computer all the time. So
It's funny though, as an entrepreneur, you get that there's no buzz like that for a sale, you know? Like I'm even thinking back to the lads were running like a juggling toy company when we first were in Wayflower. Like honestly, there's a tube with a ball that went through it. But I'll never forget when the two of them, they were running like 20 quid on Facebook ads and getting absolutely nothing every day.
Just getting trolled. Yeah.
the Karens on the comments. Yeah.
But I'll never forget walking into the office to them one day. They were just like, Jack, we've cracked it. We figured it out. Like, you know, we've sold like 500 quid worth in the loos. And that buzz is something that you're never going to get if you go into your own job or anything like that, you know? So,
yeah. Why ripped jeans?
Jamie, we all know you were wearing ripped jeans back in the day.
Your target audience back in 2016, yeah.
Yeah, just because I saw it on Geordie Shore and I could find it on AliExpress to dropship it. And it just so happened. I mean, this was back when Facebook ads were like way cheaper. So it's always like coulda, woulda, shoulda. I should have focused more then, and that would have been like fucking Gymshark or something. But yeah, it was just opportunistic, I guess. It's really discovering like media buying and acquisition that brought in actual revenue for the first time. I was like, okay, this is actually a business.
If we skip forward now to say end of 2021 and Spacegoods, the functional morning blend, like was that opportunistic, or is that something that you're actually passionate about?
Well, yeah, I suppose we skipped like the part where I built like 2 other brands.
We'll come back. Yeah.
But just to touch briefly on that, they were quite just off the cuff. Fuck it, I'll start this. Yeah. This brand was a bit more step back. Where do I think there's opportunity? Plus, what am I generally interested in? I got interested in microdosing magic mushrooms, psilocybin, not legal, functional mushrooms in this, legal. People get that confused. But the initial premise was I wanted to create a legal alternative to psychedelic microdose, and if/when that becomes legalized, I can move into that, which is why it's quite psychedelic branding, all that. But also, more practically, I saw in America brands like Mudwater, Four Sigmatics, all this sort of adaptogen ingredients blowing up, functional beverage. And no one was really doing the mushroom coffee thing in the UK or Europe, at least not properly. There was the old like Amazon brand, not doing much volume. And all the brands in America look and sound the same, black packaging, black or brown packaging, basically. So I thought I looked at it. Obviously, I'd started brands before, so I looked at the unit economics. Do I think they stack up? I wanted to do subscription because I'd never done that before. Consumable obviously fits that very well. I saw just lion's mane as a Google trend was blowing up. Still is now, but 2.5 years ago, even more so, it was earlier. And then basically thought, fuck it, I'll do this. Which is it was quite scary because it's the first time I'd spent many months and a lot of other people's money as well as a bit of my own starting it, because I'd got investors for the first time off the back of the previous business, which I'm sure we'll get into. But yeah, I suppose it has worked out, because I thought as well, maybe with the previous stuff, was it a fluke? But to go from 0 to 1 again, it's clearly not a fluke. I mean, 0 to 1 being like 0 to market fit, really, like not 0 to 1 million, because we're at like 10 million now. But yeah, I think I'm quite good at the 0 to 1. Yeah. I do feel like I could do 0 to the first few million in probably any niche to some extent. The thing I haven't done yet, and I'm trying to do with this one, is how do you go from being a bedroom brand that can get to 10 million in revenue, which tends to be the ceiling, I think, to make it like a proper scale up that can get to 30, 50 million plus, which a lot less brands can do because it just objectively gets harder. So
you've talked about that growth from 0 to 1, or in actual revenue from 0 to 10 million. Like, things are obviously going very well. Spacegoods, lots of good reviews. You've been in GQ, Men's Health, lots of magazines. Like, where do you see the next seeds of growth coming from?
I think it's primarily less reliance on Meta and moving outside of the UK. So I think you can probably get to 20 million a year in the UK, to be honest. So I know a guy called Jack Rubin, who runs a brand called Purdy and Fig. If you know those guys, they're doing like 50 million in the UK this year, just in the UK, just on Meta. But that's a lot more mass market in my view. It's like home cleaning products.
Yeah.
I do think the way I'm positioning it as Coffee Plus is potentially quite mass market, but not as much as cleaning. So yeah, I think like new channels, i.e. not less reliant on Meta for acquisition. Retail is growing quite a lot. I did 250,000 in retail last month, which has come out of nowhere. It's not that every month, but it's growing. And then like the UK is quite small in the grand scheme of things. So like European markets are growing for us. We haven't done America yet. I feel like you've always got to keep something in your pocket. And if we do America now and fuck it up, it's a much better story and this is the advice I had as well, which you might agree with. It's better to dominate the UK and be the brand in that space first, rather than be 2 million in 10 countries. It's better to be 20 million in one.
Yeah.
And leave Europe, leave America, leave Asia in your back pocket for Series B, Series C, if Nestle wants to buy it one day, that sort of thing. Which is probably thinking a bit too high level and fluffy at this stage, but that's just like a thing I think about long term.
We were talking about this a little last night, remember? About like where you get the 0 to 10 million. It's interesting because, as you say, you call it bedroom brand. I think it's a little more than a bedroom brand somehow.
It's a big bedroom brand.
A big bedroom brand, but you get to a stage where, there's really 3 ways you can grow in any business. It's either get more off your current customers, so increase pricing, more products, whatever, move into new countries, or move into retail. And when we were talking about it, I think I was saying, if you want to get to 100 million in revenue, you need to 10x your number of subscribers. You're at 15,000 now. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So to get to 150,000, like, you can't do it in the UK. You're going to eventually have to do it. So that
but the CAC becomes too inefficient.
Yeah, it becomes super inefficient.
In theory, but not efficiently.
Yeah. And so you start needing to be like, life is all about making decisions to make it easy. Like, you don't want to have to kill it and get 100% in the exam. You want to pick somewhere where you can get 60% and it still works. Do you know what I mean? And so what's interesting, I worked for a brand Vitit years ago. Vitit like physically drinks, like they're all over the UK and Ireland. They're in like
I
20.
think I had one yesterday.
Yeah, you did, yeah. But they sell into retail. And so like it's so hard to go into America if you're in retail because you're competing for shelf space off Coca-Cola and Pepsi and everyone else. So you need such big marketing budgets because the reality is the retail stores say, yeah, I'll take you in, but you need to give me $2 million for advertising for your product or free product or whatever it is. Whereas it's interesting because, I don't know the answer, but it's interesting that for you to move into America or test it, like it's literally running meta ads in the States.
Does the CAC work?
And does the CAC work?
That's what it comes down to.
Yeah. Have you done any testing in America?
I did a test for like a week, and then I just thought like even if this works, it's not the right time to do it because it was a focus thing. We didn't have the fulfillment set up. Like, there are like there's just CAC is like even the margins would be less because we'd be shipping from the UK for a start, at least for now. And then it's like, is it worth opening a fulfillment center in the US right now? Probably not. So yeah, there's all these levers, but it also comes down to like what can you actually handle as a small team with like granted more budget than I had at the start, but still like I think I'm probably more paranoid about like cash in and out the door than I was 2 years ago when it was a bit of angel money because I've seen it go wrong before, i.e. the previous business, which is probably a really good trait to have. It's like think big, act small. It's kind of a mantra I try and keep. There is a line. Where's the line between you're actually resisting growth by just being too like, oh, I don't want to risk this. But yeah, it's finding that sweet spot. I think too many brands, especially venture-backed ones in like 2018 to 2022, just thought that spending more money on marketing than they were getting in revenue was a sensible growth tactic. And it didn't end very well.
Tell me about it, eh?
Well, you probably saw a lot of that, yeah.
What, we went from 100 people
October 21 to 500 people 5 months later.
Wow.
Like,
That's stupid. Didn't realize it was that bad.
Back down to 300 then come November after. So yeah, we learnt that in a different part of the world, but in SaaS. The same principles applied. Bit of VC money came in and we...
A lot.
So obviously internationalization and going to the US may be a big focus when the time is right, but right now in the UK, like how are you looking to grow? Is it multi-product? I know you released a decaf version yesterday. Retail you mentioned.
So like the biggest lever I found, so I spent 2 years with a chocolate flavored drink that's positioned as a coffee alternative. That is just stupid, like in hindsight. And there's so many things, I'm sure there'll be things I'm doing now that in a year's time I think, why was I doing that? But like flavors so far, and this is giving away all the source, all my competitors that have ripped my brand 5 times over. I've got a long list of them. I'm going to get their websites deleted in 6 months if they try anything. But flavors has been the biggest lever. Even in like the past 3 months, like we had a really shit month in May. Like I don't know if a lot of maybe Wayflyer customers were seeing it. Like March, April, May, Meta went to shit for loads of people. And I was panicking. I was like, hold on, our financial model doesn't make sense if our CAC is 30% higher. And then we launched 2 new flavors and CAC came down like 50%. Conversion rate went up. I was like, phew, I had the best month ever. And it's been, the past 4 months have been like that. So I think, often as like e-com fan, I think most of the e-com scene, especially like early stage, is talking about marketing, but you cannot outmarket a subpar product range. You just can't. Like it's like trying to polish a turd. Like it's never going to work. And the thing you were saying about make it easy, like I think that mindset comes from like a bit more maturity, which I'm starting to realize now, is in like when you're younger, it's just like, oh, almost if I'm not grinding, if it's not really hard, then I can't be working. Yeah. But if the sensible thing is to launch a coffee flavor and actually you've just brought your CAC down by 50% with no more work, then you should do the things that are like simple but sensible.
So I would have thought
like little things.
Yeah, that the multi-product would help from a conversion point of view, but you actually see a big uplift in the marketing and the CAC element because you're just marketing more.
Well, and also like another in line with all this, like I was running like 25 landing pages for like the past year. Like it's the classic meme. Have you seen it? Where it's like I think it's the midwit meme, where it's like the stupid person thinks X, the average person panics about everything, and the really intelligent person thinks the same as the stupid person. And I was like, fuck all this. Let's run all our ads to one product page, scrap off all the landing pages, which I spent like hours tinkering, and performance was better overnight. So like simple shit scales usually. But you get so bogged down in the weeds, like I need to try this, and just like step back and think like, what's sensible?
The obvious solution is the best one.
Yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but a few tactical things.
Yeah, but as people who come from the data world, there's such a temptation to run thousands of A/B tests.
Yeah.
And often your intuition can just tell you like the better landing pages, just run.
You end up splitting hairs at that stage.
Yeah,
too.
you do.
I'm running 100 landing pages, but this one was 0.01% better. Let's move to that. It's like, well, that was just an extra 3 views.
Yeah.
That was it.
I think it's more just like fundamentals, isn't it? Like, is the product good? Do people like the flavor?
Yeah.
Like, shit like that is going to have a way bigger impact than the color of an ad card. So focus on the main thing.
Yeah. And if that makes a difference, it's just
Yeah.
data chucking out. Yeah, it's just chance. Like it's like, oh, that was 55% versus 45%. Let's change that. You know.
I shouldn't say that as a data guy, but yeah, it is. A lot of it's just suit itself. Yeah. You mentioned retail as well. How's that going?
So I know nothing about retail, probably. Well, I didn't know anything about retail. I still know almost nothing about retail. It was never like the plan, but I do think brands now, especially, it's good to be like multi-channel. So like we're website, Amazon, which is tiny, and then retail. The contribution margin on retail is so much better, but it's so slow. There's an argument that it's like brand damaging if they're bidding on your keywords and shit. But I just thought, fuck it, I've never done it before. So Holland & Barrett came to me, said, we like the product, can we stock it? I said, yeah. It's revenue. Of course you can. Yeah, it seems to be going well. They've gone from 300 stores to like nationwide, which is 900 stores. We launched like 5 new SKUs in there. We're in Boots nationwide as well. Whole Foods as well. Whole Foods is one of those ones where on LinkedIn you get these founders that put the fucking like virtue signaling post with all their team outside that they've like spent the whole day coming in from different parts of the country to go and get a picture. We got Whole Foods PO and it was £600. That's for their entire real estate, which is 3 stores in the UK. So like that's one of the things that I'm probably the only founder willing to say. It looks great, but it's a load of shit. It doesn't mean anything. It's probably like brand credibility, and there is that element definitely. But like the revenue from something like Whole Foods is not even worth like the train ticket to go and visit them.
Do you see that halo effect in your online sales?
Potentially. I reckon what's happening more is the halo effect from our Instagram advertising is helping rate of sale in like Holland & Barrett. Which you don't actually have all the data on because they charge you to get the data and it's all real weird. But my logic is they're giving us more orders. It's working. Obviously, like the big boy retailers like Tesco, Waitrose, all that, it's not the right format. So we are speaking to Tesco about doing like a single serve at the till for like £1.
Yeah.
Or even a 7-day box for like £7. Some other brands like Real Superfoods have done that recently. I think that's a pretty good tactic. It's just the margins will be non-existent, but if it's Tesco, probably worth doing it.
So at the till will be an RTD drink?
No, sorry, so it'll be a single serve powder. We are also working on an RTD, a can, which would be more like mass market, compete against like all the fucking iced coffees and shit.
A lot of things you've said, not the focus right now, I don't have the bandwidth. Like, does it come back to hiring, getting in that partner/co-founder person to take on that operational side that you don't like, or is it more that you don't want the whole business distracted?
I just think like $1 million per head per year for a D2C business. At least retail probably is a higher head count because the margins are bigger and it's different unit economics. But yeah, I think that should be doable. You should be able to do 20 million a year with 20 people, I think, in this sort of business model. It's not like we need a massive sales team knocking on doors or maybe like an on-trade drinks brand would. So yeah, your question. I mean, like, so I've got people doing all the bits. The problem is like managing the team in itself. Like, even if it's a small team, is like, I'm not very equipped to do that because I'm just not good at that. So I've been looking at hiring an ND again. I did hire one like a year and a bit ago, which is what I think you're referring to when you say I'm good at firing people. That just didn't work out. It was ridiculous in hindsight. Too soon, the wrong hire, the wrong person, no hiring process in itself, which was stupid. So I've actually hired a headhunter recently for this role because I think the reason for that hire is it's probably quite controversial because it's quite soon, but also, well, it's not because there's a lot of businesses that have got much more expensive teams than me and they're smaller. But for me, it feels quite soon to come from like the bootstrap mindset. But the reason for that is twofold. Firstly, I'm not doing any of the shit I enjoy or I'm good at anymore because I'm just doing all the admin, which someone else could do better and enjoy. But secondly, it's making the business, because now it is a venture-backed business, the capital goal of the business is different from just running a profitable lifestyle business, which is the default for most founders, and it probably should be that. I decided there was more merit in terms of what I want to achieve, like tangibly building a big brand, but also the potential financial outcome felt on balance net more likely to be good having raised VC than not. There was a lot of nuance and context around that, but for me, that felt like a good decision at the time.
Question, Jamie. You've just started your first business. You have 2 co-founders. Yeah? What advice would you give someone looking for co-founders?
So I think we're very different. Like you said, you're quite a generalist and that you don't really have any gaps that are so obvious you need to fill them. Like I have a lot of gaps, I would say. So like
Lots of gaps.
yeah. I think like for me, 2 things I would say. One is you have to get on with the people. Like if you don't, it just won't work. It may work for the first year. When the business is doing well, it will work because all things are happy. Once you hit a bit of turbulence, I think if you're not actually getting on with the person or you're not mates outside of it, I actually think it's really tough. And number 2 is just find someone who is so different to you. Like, I know that sounds contradictory because you want to get on with the person, but like me and you couldn't be further apart in terms of how we work.
Yeah.
Like I'm more in the weeds, detail orientated. Jack is big picture, big vision, but I lack that. And I think it works well to have a bit of contradictory skill sets, but also you have to get on. Yeah. I don't think I could do this without a co-founder, to be honest.
I think it's different. It's probably different in SaaS as well, because there is more of a technical element to the business that you rely on, probably, rather than like, geez, I'm a dummy, like in reality. So I need 2 smart.
Yeah, I mean, if I was starting like a SaaS, I definitely need a technical
Exactly.
co-founder. I'm not like that.
Yeah, me and you would need a Jamie and Joe at all time. Cheers, Les. Thank you, Jamie.
Are we trying to split the G again? Is that only the intro?
Yeah, why not, will we? See if we've gotten any thirstier.
Fuck, I haven't allowed that.
Fucking hell.
To beginners. I'm unshot it.
You are thirsty, huh?
Do the goalposts move now that you've raised VC money? Because I know it's a controversial enough topic in the D2C space, but like,
It's very controversial.
like, can you chase that freedom, body, lifestyle, and keep the thing ticking over, or do you have to hit certain targets now on certain dates, and there's a bit more pressure after raising money?
I mean, for me, coming back to what I said before, I decided that, it's a controversial thing. And I think a lot of people default to you shouldn't raise money if you're in consumer, but they don't actually know the facts. I decided for me, I want to build a big business. And I think there's a greater chance of me making 10 million quid plus personally, clear off the table with venture than without, because I fucked up the previous business when the market was really good and money was cheap and everyone was scaling. But I know objectively speaking to a lot of mates that look really successful from the outside, they're having a hard time compared to 2-3 years ago. And they just would never put that on the internet, whereas I do. It's harder to bootstrap now, basically, was my point. And then I thought as well, was actually like, I think it comes down to the right investors as well, to be fair. For me, the word on the street is I got probably the best investors I could have got in Europe in terms of the food and bev space. If I'd raised 2 years prior, the valuation might have been 3 times higher, but it is what it is. And then it's like, well, do you want to build a profitable lifestyle business? Because unless you raise, the business has to be really quite profitable, even just to have enough cash to pummel into stock, etc. Probably grind slower, but you own the whole thing, whatever. That interested me less than the prospect of trying to go bigger with one, i.e. how can I get to like 30 to 50 million in revenue, which to be honest is really rare if you're bootstrapping it. I mean, there are obviously examples, but statistically it's rare. But the thing about targets and stuff, I think that's a good thing. Yes, there's targets now because we have a budget which is agreed for the year, but that's a good thing because if there's pressure to perform, I also want us to perform because I want us to win more than any of the investors do because I've got the biggest chunk of equity and it's my life compared to one bit of their portfolio, right?
The question people forget is there's bootstrapping, which you should just assume is every business, and then there's do I raise funding? And the question has to be, well, why am I raising the funding? Like I was talking to a guy, Andy from Super Affiliate recently, and the question is like, well, if I can raise money and if I spend 100 grand and it gives me $1 million of ARR and I need equity to do that, well then bloody hell, that's a great decision. Yeah, because I'm getting like a 10 to 1 LTV to CAC. If you're getting anything over a 3 to 1 LTV to CAC and you need the money to do it, it makes so much sense. And I think in e-com, it's funny because there's businesses that are one-time sale with maybe a little bit on top, and there's subscription businesses. And by their nature, if you're a subscription business, like we used to do it in Wayflyer, there's like, you're spending your CAC on the first purchase. You're not making any money on the first purchase. You shouldn't be if you have a decent subscription business.
Yeah, and so as us.
Yeah, exactly. And so by its nature, like you need funding, whether it's debt funding, whether it's venture funding, whatever it happens to be, you need some form of capital in the business to fund that. And yeah, you could just do it on debt, but it gives you much like tighter margins for ups and downs. You know, if something goes wrong, it's you don't have that much room. So having some equity in the business, and
Well, also debt's the only thing that can kill a business, right?
Yeah, exactly.
As I learned 3 years ago.
yeah, exactly. Well and truly,
If that was equity funded,
we just pay it out. They put more money in to get you out of the situation and all that sort of stuff. So
I also think as well, like, it depends what like space you're in. Like typically, to give an easy example, you probably wouldn't raise venture for, you might, but like you don't typically see like gym clothing brands raising venture capital because it's not a new space. It's not,
there's no
hot in
R&D.
emerging markets, that sort of stuff. Whereas I saw like big brands in America that were also venture backed. And like I said, I hadn't seen anyone do it in Europe. It's like growing space like adaptogens, nootropics, mushrooms. And also there's investors like 5 Seasons, who are my main investor, who objectively are interested in the space. So there also has to be investors that want to back you as well as you want to raise money. The raising money in itself, I learned so much in that process. I remember asking you what Seed Fast was 3 years ago when you put some money in. Come a long way since then. I understand it a bit more now, but even that process of speaking to investors and pitching to investors, a lot of them are assholes, in my view, by the way. Not naming any names, it's very patronizing.
Those who can't do VC.
Yeah. I thought there was going to be one in between, but it's just straight to VC. But yeah, I reckon because I raised a bit of angel money before, like 500k. Then I reckon I spoke to like literally 50 different VCs over like 6 months. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to raise money. And then I was like, all right, fuck it, I'm going to raise money. And then you spend so much time back and forth with funds and that. And then eventually you get one that wants to invest and then they all want to invest. Yeah. It's a bit like dating. When you've got a girlfriend, all the girls are interested. It's true. Like there's so many things in life
It's a bit like being Jamie Cam.
I'm sure.
There is a FOMO in that space though. Like as soon as they hear one doing a deal, they will do.
Being oversubscribed, whereas a month before I thought, fuck this,
Couldn't get anyone.
I'm not going to grow. I'm going to like run out of money because I'm scaling too hard on the front end.
It's, you know what, they're the biggest in the entire world. Maybe it's a controversial thing to say, but they're all bringing you to the ball and dancing around, and until one of them eventually takes the plunge and gives you something, like nothing happens. And so I always used to say to people running processes, the most important thing is you can do a little bit of a dance at the start with everyone, you know, let them know you're not raising money, but you know, tell them about the business. But when you do go to raise, you have to create this process and this deadline where you spend a few months before you go and you meet them all and tell them what you're up to and say, I'm going to do something in a few months. If you're interested in being included in that process, let me know. And you need to say, we'll start on a Monday, 2 weeks later on the Friday, every single term sheet offer has to be in. If it's not in, it's done, and you move on. And at least it like cordons off your time, because as you said, as a single founder, like 6 months of...
Yeah, I also didn't understand the dynamics of like creating competition and what to say at the right time. And I was just like, yeah, we're raising. I should have been like, we don't need the money, we're not raising. I mean, I'd be much more well equipped going into a future fundraiser if you do one. And of course, having raised money, like I have investors reaching out all the time, like, oh, I would love to invest. Of course they would, because they've seen that a credible investor is already on the cap table. It just becomes easier.
Yeah, I think that the top 1% of investors either have the conviction to take a risk or can do the due diligence and know that there's potential in the market. The other 99% are just fast followers.
Will follow at better terms. That's it. Yeah.
You've nailed it. You've absolutely nailed it right there. That's it.
Basically, 2 more questions to wrap up the VC space. One is like, have you found that they are useful outside of the cash and they're able to help an e-com founder? And 2 is like, obviously it's very brand dependent, but would you recommend doing it to other e-com founders?
I think on the first one, again, it probably hugely depends who it is and like what's their track record and credibility and how well respected are they in the market, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I think VC probably gets a bad rap, but again, it's like, what's best for you? And then also at high level, I decided that for me, I still own more than 50% of the business and so on, but you know, eventually I might not if we raise again. And I suppose as well, when you're a solo founder, I still own a lot more equity than co-founders would right now.
So we're
So
fucked.
as a sub, well, I mean, they'll probably only make 3 billion each. Like, would I recommend it? I mean, I think if you need to raise money, like, go to angels first, obviously. The reason being, they're probably more value add if you find people like Jack, for example. Not that everyone should DM him for money.
No.
And also, angel money, at least in my experience, is a lot less. There's a lot less red tape, like a liquidation preference and all that sort of shit. It's just, there's money in, it's ordinary shares, that's it.
It's interesting though, you feel so much when there's angels have given you money, it's so much more personal. Because
It's a person.
at that stage, there's nothing. Like, there isn't a business. They shouldn't give you money. You know? There's nothing written down on paper that's a metric like, well, you're doing this revenue, multiple valuation. Yeah, okay. It's literally, you're backing a person. You're saying, I believe in you. Yeah. And when someone says to you, yeah, I believe in you, it's like the most inspiring, like, greatest feeling of all time. And so in return, you always want to give them like that respect back. Yeah, you want to update them. You want to make them so much more money. And so you mentioned I'd go to angels at the start. I think going to angels and getting a few angels in, it adds pressure, but in a positive way. Yeah. Do you know?
Yeah, and good angels are like mentors as well, to some extent.
Yeah.
If you can find the right ones.
100%.
So it's kind of like a win-win.
100%. And all mentors like want to help people because people help them. Do you know? Like, when people ask me for money, I'm like, well, there's loads of people gave me money when I was just like, hey, I promise it's good. You know, so you feel like you come full circle and you want to do that. There's levels of doing that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an unbelievable feeling. Yeah, getting money off a person where it's their money, which is so different to a fund. Do you know?
Yeah, exactly.
You've spoke about the challenges that you face from obviously raising money and challenges that came there. Copycats was another one. Moving into the US, like, what are the big challenges now going ahead for Spacegoods that you see over the next 6 to 12 months?
So we pivoted the business in the last year to be entirely subscription focused. You can still buy it one time, but all the acquisition, all the offers and shit is centered around a subscriber is objectively worth more than the average person that doesn't subscribe, even if they buy more than once. So let's focus on subscriptions. Retention, yes, we've done a lot of work on that over the past few months. We have like an agency we work with that are like data wizards that do a lot of that shit. I actually need to hire someone full-time in-house for retention. We have like a CRM agency, which is them, and then like an email person. But yeah, that becomes as important, if not more important, than acquisition, especially at the higher levels, because you can probably squeeze out more LTV on a customer easier than you can keep CAC down.
Yeah, 100%. Out of interest, actually, okay, a little sidestep, but Meta is obviously, Meta, you're very, very bloody good at Meta. You're talking about Facebook ads, everyone talks about it. How much has TikTok come through for you? Are you using it? Are you spending on it?
Yeah, so TikTok's an interesting one. So TikTok ads and then TikTok shop, probably the two relevant topics there. TikTok ads we do a little bit on. We spend fuck all, it's like 10 grand a month, whereas we spend like 300 a month on Meta. Yeah, we've got a list of new channels now, because one thing I want to do over the next few months, and it's also the advice of investors, is figure out how to be less reliant on Meta. Not because Meta's going to go away, but because Meta's going to get more expensive objectively, as it has done in the past. And also, you don't want to be so reliant on one channel that if it goes, you're actually fucked. Which probably most brands are.
99%.
It's Meta and Google, but mainly Meta.
Yeah.
TikTok ads, haven't really cracked it. I feel like it's probably worth bringing in as more like top of funnel again. TikTok shop, which is what everyone's talking about now. We did try that. I paid an agency too much money for like 1 month. Can't work out if it was a fair test, but didn't work very well. We did like 500 quid in a month. I was like, fuck this. Mainly though, because you can't do subscriptions. Model
Makes no sense.
You could say, oh, well, if the CAC's low enough, it still makes sense. But when the whole business and financial model is built around subscriptions online, I just decided, we did it for like 2 months in the end. It was just too much newness and too different to everything else. And it was like, it's not worth it right now. And also, I think just because every founder on Twitter is saying that's what they're doing right now doesn't mean it's necessarily right for your business. For example, like I said Pearly and Fig earlier, like, I know they only do Meta pretty much. At least that's what I've been told recently. So, yeah, I think new exciting, shiny object things are great, but like, doesn't mean every brand should do it.
How do you think about influencers then?
Yeah, so influencers, hadn't touched them until January this year. Now we do a shitload of influencer gifting. So I work with an agency that does this. I think we spend like 20 grand a month on it now, which is like their fee, but it covers the influencers. So influencers right now is a content and whitelisting machine for Meta, basically, which has definitely brought down CAC, and they've got all this like mini MMM model, which models out the CAC on the gifting post and all this shit. What we haven't done is like big ambassadors, big like almost celebrity like influencers, which I've always been a bit scared of, because in the past I've done like Jay Alvarez and I spent 50 grand on 3 posts and it brought in next to nothing, and I went to bed crying because it was half a bank account. Back in like 2019.
I'm around if you need to. All right, I'm around if you need.
Yeah, exactly. So if you start posting up,
0 followers.
yeah. But I've actually got one of my investors go. This is public, so I can say it. Or maybe I can't say. Maybe he's not publicly involved. Okay, one of my investors started a brand recently. He's had a big exit in the past, so he just got bored and started a new brand. But he started with a big influencer called M the Nutritionist. Don't know if you know, like 2 million followers. No, don't. That's quite an interesting strategy, I think, with influence, actually starting a brand and giving them a chunk of equity. Yeah.
I remember we talked about a while ago. Someone asked, maybe it was like 4 years ago, if you wanted to start $1 billion company, as
I remember you saying
quickly as possible, what would you do? And I remember going, you just go and you find, you don't bother with the middle. You find the biggest 8 influencers. Emma Chamberlain.
Coffee.
And you just go, Emma, what do you like? What brand would you start? And because her followers obviously follow her, so it's got to be that. And you find 8 of them and you go and get the product, and they own as much as they want. They can have 70% if they want or whatever. But within 12 months of launch, you would 100% have $1 billion. There's no way that they don't get to 100 million in revenue in like each in 12 months. Like Mr. Beast, Emma Chase.
There's a lot of examples in America of this now.
Yeah,
even like James, well, Prime's the obvious one, but even like Jake Paul launched it was a shower brand or something.
And it's already, they raised it like
15, 20 mil?
even more, I think. Yeah, it was
that was the raise at like 200 mil valuation. Yeah.
And they have no sales basically.
Yeah.
But that's the way you do it. And obviously the big difference is that sometimes when you get influencers on board and you pay them, you're like, I'll pay you 10 grand for a post, one post. It's just like, it's a waste of your time.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
They have to be properly bought into it.
It's getting that incentive structure right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I do wonder if there's scope to bring in a big influencer like that at a later stage, still for equity, but because you've got product market fit, you give them a smaller slice. Yeah. To give them 10% instead of 50, 100%. For example. Like, I mean, I don't know who would be the obvious person, but even fucking Justin Bieber. You want to go to America, partner with Justin Bieber. How would you, I mean, you probably find it easy, but how would you get your foot in the door to have that conversation? Because I was speaking to my mate who claims he knows the guy that started the brand with Jake Paul. I wonder how they got the foot in the door in the first place, because my view would, you'd have to have built a brand and probably sold it before yourself. So maybe my next brand I'll do with a celebrity.
So we did this, Jake Brown. Jake, you know Jake, don't you? It's Jake.
Go House.
Yeah, the Go House, Pueblo, now Retrograde. But it's very funny because when we talked about this, he asked me that question maybe like 4 years ago. And afterwards, at one stage, we went on our laptop and wrote this ridiculous cold email, stupidly long. And we sent one to Grace Beverly and we sent one to Emma Chamberlain.
He's doing that with her now.
And we were like, you know what, let's do this and see if this works. Grace Beverly replied to her cold email, flew over to Dublin, we had dinner with her, and now Jake has started Retrograde with her as co-founders, 3-4 years later. Emma Chamberlain again, massive long cold email to them. Her manager replied to the email, did a call with her manager like 4 days later.
Really? Fucking hell, I've never even tried that.
And both of them were on complete cold emails. Like that was all.
What was the format of was there a lot of like proof in there?
So we could at times say, well, we started Wayflyer and Pebble just got bought by Wayflyer and is in the influencer space. So we had credibility to a certain extent within it. But like at that stage, we'd done maybe Series A. So still some credibility, but it wasn't at that level or anything.
It was also during peak crypto where you had all of these Hollywood celebrities becoming advisors to all these crypto companies who
Biggest rug of all. I mean, to be fair, at the end of the day, like these big influencers and celebrities, they want business. That's how they make money. So they're probably going to read most of the ones that look credible.
Exactly.
Yeah. And if you can hit them with a product that they actually do care about and like, then you're sorted. Yeah. You mentioned you tried it before with, was it J Alvarez, did you say? It didn't work?
Yeah, so I did quite a few like semi-big influencer things with my jewelry brand back in the day, Midnight City. J Alvarez was the biggest one. He's still quite big now, but I don't know what he does. He's one of those kind of, like, he's like the original like Tumblr boy aesthetic, like travel, tattoos.
Hawaii
surfer, skinny but tanned. And it was, like 50K for 3 Instagram posts. I remember speaking to his manager on the phone thinking I was some big dog. And just nothing happened. I was just like, did he even post? He got like 400,000 likes. You'd think there's a lot of impressions on that, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know why that didn't work. It makes you think, like, are the followers real? I don't know. It just didn't move the needle. And I was like, wow, that was a lot of money, which has always given me like PTSD for doing big influencer stuff. I think you'd have to do it differently now rather than just like a solo post. I also did like some of the early Love Island people. Not that I ever watched that, but they used to be like really big in the UK.
Is that with the jewellery or the...
Yeah, with the jewellery, yeah. But that was like 3 or 4 grand a post. Still a lot, but not as much as J Alvarez. Whereas if you just put that money into Meta ads...
Yeah, you're getting a known return for that.
ROI. Yeah.
The challenge is people will scroll by that post once and they'll forget about it and they'll never go back.
Yeah.
Whereas if you can hit them every day for a week, that's when you start to kind of break into their mentality.
It's a difference too, because influencers, the reason I follow them is I like them. And like we all know they're advertising stuff all the time, and that's one level. But then there's the like starting a brand. And it's like, if it's theirs and I follow them and I like them, that's just such a different prospect.
Yeah, advertising something random.
Versus like, hey, check out this new brand I really like. And we're all like, yeah.
Especially now, because back in like when Gymshark started, they were like the OGs to do influencers in like 2012. People didn't know influencer marketing was then. So it was more authentic. Now it's, oh, fuck me, another ad. It's just not. And this was 5 years ago, wasn't effective in 2019, like probably even less so now in the traditional format.
Great.
So influencer brands is probably the way to go.
Matt, I was waiting until you had about 2.5 pints before we dived into some of your previous brands that we worked on. Neon Beach and Midnight City. You've obviously come a long way now in the past 4 years, 5 years. What's changed since back then for you as a founder, and why are you better now?
Well, I mean, that officially went tits up like 3 and a bit years ago. So like March 21, had to do a pre-pack administration. You were involved. I don't know if that's public knowledge.
Yeah, it's okay to say it, yeah.
Yeah, horrible time. I mean, I think what's changed is having a good finance person is probably one thing. He was an Irish lad as well. He's a legend. I think you guys know him, Seamus. Do you know him? Seamus, yeah. I think also just realizing you need a way bigger business than you think to like have the lifestyle that people flex online when they've made like their first 100 grand in revenue. Because like even doing $1 million a month in revenue, like if you're making good margins, like EBITDA margin in e-com, maybe 10 to 15% is like really good when you're growing. That's going back into stock. You're probably paying yourself a shit salary. You're paying 40% tax on that shit salary. Like, I think a lot of people when they start, including me, like I bought a finance supercar when I started dropshipping, like big money. You don't even think, and then you build up a director's loan. Basically, lack of real world financial knowledge, and it's because it's not taught in schools. Yeah. So like when you start, there's a lot of revenue coming in, a lot of cash in the bank very quickly. You start to think differently, and just for me, it was buying stupid cars, and like that wasn't in itself the problem.
Yeah.
But that was a symptom of the attitude of thinking I'm invincible. Like I don't have to plan my cash flow. And I mean, not having a finance guy was the number one problem. But like these are I was just very arrogant probably back then. Couldn't see round corners in terms of the risk of growing too quickly. Whereas now it's like, I only want to grow if it's like sustainable and we can keep up with the customer demand and the reviews are good and like the cash flow makes sense. I could probably have done 15 million this year, but we'll do 9 because it's efficient and it made sense with the team.
There are a lot of founders out there that, you know, you brought those businesses to 8 figures, 7, 8 figures. A lot of founders out there would kill for that. So was there any one moment or any one big mistake? I know you said not having a finance person, but what did that actually mean, not having a finance person? What did that result in for you?
Like practically, there was obviously 2 businesses, Midnight City, which was a good business, jewelry business, doing about 300 grand a month or something. Neon Beach was the problem business. Mistake number 1 was structuring 2 different, mistake number 1 was running 2 brands at the same time, thinking you can do that. It's fucking hard. But then structuring them under the same entity legally, so saying MK Brands Limited, go and search on company's house, it's fucked. That was a big mistake in hindsight. I mean, the problem with the Neon Beach business was it was a bespoke product business. It was made to order, B2B and B2C. Great AOV, great conversion rate, great demand as a result of offering a product that no one else was offering, because I bought one for myself with a Midnight City logo, ironically, again, customer number 1. And then thought other people must want custom neon signs in their house during COVID when they're all sat at home on furlough and, you know, they want the aesthetic for nighttime to make it less depressing. So perfect timing, perfect product for great margin, low CAC. You know, it's like 200 quid cash margin on the average order, which if you've got 100 quid CAC, you're making a lot of money. So great business. It could still probably be done now, but the demand might be different because of the times and so on. But the supply chain was just horrible. So I had like 40 people in the Philippines, which was fine at the time. We actually brought the production from China to the UK, which is where things went very wrong, because I thought that was how to turn like an okay business that was getting by supply chain wise into a much better lockdown solid business that could scale to like 100 million. Because I actually had like VCs and shit, like, this is a great idea, it's growing super quick, we think this can be huge. Basically the problem was I put too much money into a factory in the UK that bit off more than they could chew, hadn't done my due diligence. I mean, fundamentally, the supply chain was the problem, which is why I got into cash flow problems of paying too much money. They couldn't keep up, customers wanting refunds, continuing to market into Q4, thinking we need to scale through our supply chain problems as well. So we do, because you've taken on like revenue-based financing to pay for this factory, all this sort of shit. Took on too many creditors, some of which were personally guaranteed, which I didn't know about at the time, which is a massive mistake as well. You know, the crux of it was not having proper financial knowledge and planning and execution to do something which was already a complicated business, i.e. custom fucking bespoke neon signs made to order at 350 quid AOV. So it's very different to selling a 40 quid product where you buy all of it up front, you know, it's a 90% product margin, give or take. It's in a warehouse. The only thing that can go wrong is it doesn't arrive with the customer and you send them a new one. It's not the same as some people were ordering like 2,000 quid signs. It's taking 4 weeks to arrive. You then got a factory that says they can make 500 a day, but actually they can make 20 a day. You've got a shitload of eyeballs because the demand is so great. It's the perfect storm. Too much demand, a really weak supply chain, and then a bad decision in moving a factory. And then to fund that move, taking on cheap credit, i.e. Wayflyer and others at the time, because it was in 2021 and 2020 when cash was cheap, unlike now. So there were a lot of providers that come into the market giving out funding to pretty sandy foundation businesses like mine, shall we say. It was a pretty crazy time, to be honest.
It was funny. You'd mentioned the like young arrogance and stuff like that comes through. I still remember, I think Robbie must talk to you at the start. The first time I remember doing a call with you, and you were sitting in that dark room with the big pink neon beach sign behind you. You had a little dog and your laps like flapping out. It's there, like it was like Dr. Evil, like, you know, it's just pets. And he's like, "How much are you charging me?" Yeah, like halves. Yeah, and like it was probably the best negotiation.
Before we went, this was the shit though.
Oh, this was at the very start. We were trying to get him on board, and he was literally like, "Fuck off." He's like, "I'm not paying that much. I'll pay half it." And eventually, we were just.
I'm pretty sure I was one of Wayflyer's first customers.
You were, yeah.
September 2020.
So we launched in April 2020, okay, and we gave out in that entire month, we gave out about 500 grand across obviously a bunch of customers. And so September we gave did we give 350 to you?
Yeah,
I remember it
something
was
like that,
350, but it was sterling too. So to us that was 500,000 USD, and that was our like first time crossing 500,000 to one customer.
Really?
Yeah.
So it was the biggest at the time.
The biggest at the time.
Yeah.
It shows how good our underwriting process was then.
No, generally though, it definitely wasn't as far as it is now.
Yeah.
So I have used Wayflyer, and we're looking at using Wayflyer again in the current business. But yeah, it's definitely stricter, as it should be.
Were you also at one point the highest Amex point aggregator in the UK?
I had 15 million Amex points at one time. That's not an exaggeration. I spent my life. I've got a screenshot. I was told.
You got buy an airplane for that. Never mind, get your first class.
Told it might be one of the highest in the UK because anyone that would have spent more just wouldn't do it on Amex.
Sure.
So by default, I was the only one stupid enough to be putting that much on Amex, which is personally guaranteed.
Lads, let's get our spend on out.
Oh, I've still got points now, even in the new business. Still got an Amex, funnily enough. Yeah. And yeah, it's a life hack. Don't pay for flights to hotels, basically.
Those trips to Bali, eh?
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's good.
You've learned a lot, obviously, from then. What about the future then, for yourself and Spacegoods? What's the next 12 months look like for Spacegoods and then for Matt Kelly?
I suppose keep growing it. I think it's a big focus on building a team, especially when you've got investors and shit, because ultimately, like I said, the best outcome is get it really big as a market leader and someone wants to buy it for a lot of money. The thing that would prevent that, even if it was really big to some extent, is if it's so reliant on me that, I know we were talking about this last night, it's not entirely that, but it can't just be me on a laptop, even if it's fucking huge. So I guess a lot of that, fucking off to Marbella in a month, so
Trying to go remoting and
things up a little bit.
get the freedom.
Yeah, because I just questioned why I was running a remote business and choosing to be in London in winter, especially. I think it's a great city in the summer, but in winter it's just depressing.
Everybody in your team is full-time remote?
Yeah, so we've got a few in London that use including me, that use a co-work space now and then, but it's a remote business with the option to meet up if you really want. But I have struggled with that. Because I actually got an office in March. So I'm not fully cured of the ADHD weird decisions, because in March of this year, I thought it was a great idea to get a fixed office on a 6-month minimum term. And it was just me and one other guy in it who I ended up getting rid of because he was the wrong guy. So it was a super awkward period. It was just me and him standing in the office not speaking. I was just and I realized after about a month, fuck this. I don't want an office at all right now. Certainly not in this place, in this city, with these people, i.e. that one person. So yeah, got rid of that. That lost a bit of money on that. It wasn't anything crazy, but yeah, now I've just decided keep it remote. But I do think you can build a big business remotely. There are obviously some benefits to having everyone in one place. I just feel like for me, the benefit of not having to be in one place outweighs some of the benefits right now at this stage of having people in person. I think as the team gets bigger, that becomes harder. But I listened to the Operators pod. Don't know if you ever listened to that. It's my favorite pod. So I met Sean from Ridge for dinner a few months ago. Yeah. And I know he talks a lot about, because Ridge is fully remote and it's a 300 million a year business. So I think, fuck me, if he can do that, I can run a 10 million a year business remotely. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But the plan is grow it, finally make some big money eventually, and then do the next one.
First business was 2 days, second business 2 months,
Then
2 years. Now we're really getting there. Huh?
Yeah.
I like it.
The last question from me then is what is the exit strategy for yourself and Spacegoods? Do you have you got one, or is it just grow for the next 12 months and we go again?
Yeah, there is one. I mean, I guess the North Star is build it really big and someone like Nestle buys it, right? Something like that. That's plan A. Plan B is build it a bit smaller and sell it to private equity. Plan C is take some secondaries and fuck off to Bali. I should not say that. That's not what I'm planning on doing, but yeah, I guess
5 seasons.
Yeah. Plan A is the plan. But ultimately, yeah, build a big market dominating profitable business, and that should end up quite well.
If you sold it in the morning and you could go into any industry within the e-com space, any category, where would you be
That's a
going?
good question, actually. Fuck, I've not thought about this. And I have to decide like ASAP.
Right now?
I actually feel like, maybe it's 'cause I saw this on Twitter the other day, I feel like there's opportunity in the protein space. I feel like that's been dormant and boring for 20 years. That's one thing. I think a better general narrative is find the thing that is big. I'd probably think about the total addressable market more than I did with this, even though this is quite big as well.
Sure.
And then think, like mattresses is a great example. So, or even like teeth whitening. Like think of an industry that's been massive in retail and is like hundreds of billions per year globally, or tens of billions, that just hasn't been like modernized yet. I try and find the next one of those. So like teeth whitening was a thing in 2010. Then it was gym clothing in 2012. Then it was mattresses in 2016 with like Casper and all this shit around that time. More recently, it's been obviously mushroom. Well, mushroom coffee is more new rather than an incumbent industry. I think protein's one example. Any sort of consumable that hasn't been properly modernized yet and like hasn't been done too much on meta, because that's how you start brands, basically.
What would you do to your own question?
Yeah, but probably approaching it from a data standpoint, big TAM, repeat customer base, AOV between
another thing actually.
like has to be over $100, under $300. It's probably like a sweet spot.
That's why the ice baths did so well. I know 2 guys that have been minted from that in the past 2 years, doing the exact same shit. It's crazy.
Jamie?
It's one we've talked about for a long time. Probably getting into like baby clothing. I think the LTV there is so big. Baby wears clothes for a month before they're on to the next size and the next size. So like my brother recently just had a baby and like I bought her a little pajama suit and after about 2 weeks it's gone.
Actually, sorry, one area I was talking about with some guy that's a wizard that I wanted to hire but went to another business. Especially because I've got a fucking sausage dog, which we didn't touch on, which is ridiculous. I should not have a sausage dog. And this guy that travels quite a lot, works all the time and has a sausage dog, which I sometimes forget about. I got him with my ex-girlfriend, long story. I think the pet space is crazy. Like that's why there's so much venture in pet food, like Butternut being a perfect example. They were doing 150 million revenue, losing 50, but it's the LTV is so crazy on a business like that. I'm a customer of that. It's like 70 quid a month for my fucking dog. And I've been subscribed for like a year. So I'm probably the average customer and the lifetime revenue is like 800 quid plus.
Yeah.
Pet supplements, I think, is interesting. I know a guy doing one called Nutriport, or I know of a guy. I think Wayfire funds them. I don't know, one of them. I think that space is interesting because pets can't give an opinion on flavour. So unlike humans who are cancel if they don't like chocolate, the pet just nods and smiles.
You also don't want to cheap out on your pet.
Exactly.
Or go for the cheaper alternative because you assume it's not as good. But
So I'd probably, I'd take back protein. Protein's one, but I think something in the pet space, something consumable in the pet space that's not been really done yet. I think like the fresh dog food's been done now, but supplement of some sort in pets.
Matt, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on here. We'll have you here again in a year when you're at 50 million AR, no doubt. But thanks much for that. It's been a blast.
Pleasure. Boom.
Cheers.
Boom. There we go.